In a consultative referendum, an opinion poll, there's no contract. There's no actual requirement, which David Cameron did point out, to abide by the results of that referendum. So they did not then set it up in the way that a proper constitutional referendum would have been set up. According to international standards, to begin with, the people who would be voting in that referendum would be people who had a stake in the future of the nation, whose future they were voting on. We had every boy and his dog able to vote. So people who hadn't been in Scotland for, more than maybe a few months, basically all these people had a vote on the future of Scotland as an independent nation, which is, if you just think about it, think how absurd that is. People with no stake. Now, had that been serious, a real referendum that we were going to be allowed to have a chance of winning, they would have applied international standards. They would have used something like the New Caledonia franchise, which is a really solid and it doesn't exclude people who've moved into Scotland. It isn't just ethnic Scots. It's people who have a genuine stake interest in the future of that nation. That franchise, it shouldn't be a local council franchise. It should be one that reflects the stakeholders. Who are the real stakeholders? And that's what that needs to be. That it wasn't should have told us everything. Then we had the Edinburgh Agreement. And the Edinburgh Agreement said that there was a purdah period during which no new policies were to be announced. There was no, that all the campaigning would go on and then it stops. You can rehearse the arguments and everything that's been put forward, but nothing new should be introduced. Well, we got the vow, Devo Max, less than 2 days before the vote. If you vote no, you will get this. Of course, that did not deliver, but it completely breached the Edinburgh Agreement. What they said afterwards, well, there's no evidence that it altered people's minds. Of course it did. Of course it told people, well, if you don't want to go all the way to independence, we could have, I think Gordon Brown said it would be almost a federal relationship, with blah, blah, blah. And that meant people could say, well, if we're afraid of what will happen, afraid of being pulled out of the European Union, we'd like a lot more power, but we're not sure about a total break. Well, of course, then they voted no. Then you also had the media. And in a properly run referendum, according to international rules, you make sure it's 50-50, that people get both sides of the argument absolutely equally. There was a full study done, and it took one guy, a Glasgow University lecturer in particular, to go through everything and come back and say, look, it was over 70% no media coverage. And that also breaches international standards. So we didn't have any possibility of a fair referendum. And that wasn't coincidental. And had there been any kind of vote tampering, say with the postal vote, because it was only consultative and there was no actual, therefore, fraud, it makes it nearly impossible to get a judicial review. And there is no way, no matter what they have said, no matter what they have told us, get a majority of members elected to Westminster and that you don't need a referendum, or if Scotland wants to leave, then it has the right to do so. No matter what the British state has said, that was never true.